Hi, I'm Susan Caruso. I'm the founding director of Sunflower Creative Arts in Delray Beach, Florida, and you are listening to the Sunflower Bridge podcast, where we talk about being with children.
And I'm Lindsey Mills, the co-creator of the Sunflower Bridge. Take a breath and smile with us. Welcome to 2024.
Yes.
And it's always at the beginning of the year that we tend to be in a more kind of reflective state of mind. So we thought that we would bring you an episode about coming home to your true self, coming home to who you want to be as a parent and as a person.
Yeah, so becoming the parent that you want to be. And that takes really analyzing what you want to bring from your own family of origin, what you want to bring, what you want to leave behind, and in educating yourself and filtering all those many, many resources that parents have now. But what we like to do at Sunflower is support parents to really follow their own heart, just settle yourself down and say, who is it that I want to be? What kind of parent do I want to be? And then we try to give tools and discussion around that. And it reminds me, I think, how did I become the parent I wanted to be? And it's not that I became it very quickly. Not at all.
Sure.
And from my family of origin, I really knew exactly what I did not want to bring. I knew exactly what I didn't want to bring, but I did not know who I did want to be as a parent. And that sort of led me to, even before my children were born, to explore, what are other possibilities to the things that I struggled with as a child in my family. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of knew, even before my kids were born, I knew I was going to do things differently. I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. And then when I had my children, I realized I really didn't know who I wanted to be as a parent. So that sort of led me to research and read and watch people and have friends that had older kids, and to try to figure out, okay, what do I do? This is really important to me. I want to be the best parent I can be. How do I do that? My oldest was an easier kid. My youngest is the reason why Sunflower exists, because he challenged me, and he really pushed me to figure out who I wanted to be as a parent. I remember he was 2 years old, and we were on our way up a mountain. We were in Arizona visiting relatives that I didn't know so well from my ex's side of the family, and I had my two little boys there, and I remember him being all dressed up in like a very pale colored girl's snowsuit and with a little hood on, and he just was throwing a royal tantrum. So much so that I had to ask them to stop the car. And we got out, and it was about something like, my sock isn't right. This is my sock, my sock. And he's in this adorable snowsuit. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea what to do, but I knew that I had to stop it somehow, get out of the car. And I think I'll never forget that. That was one of those key moments where, I have to get my act together here. Mm-hmm. I need to figure this out. Because I knew I didn't want to scream at him. Sure, I didn't want to say, come on, what the heck? What's the matter with the sock? You're embarrassing me. Your uncle is driving us up in to see snow. Mm-hmm. And aren't you happy about that? I knew that none of that was going to be right. But I didn't know what to do. And that was my brick wall that I would come up against. And I think that probably a lot of parents are like that, maybe even more so, because now there's so much input as to, you should be this kind of parent, you should do this, and if you just do this number 1, 2, and 3, then you get to be the perfect parent. And that's not really true. You have to find your way. And then, once you figure it out, how to deal with a 2-year-old a 2 and a 6-year-old, then all of a sudden they become 10 and 6,
Yes.
and then what do you do? And they're very different personalities. So it's kind of an important thing. Like we always say, your history really plays into it. And then what do you do? How do you decide how you want to be as a parent? And how do you become that? Because it's not that you're going to do it instantaneously, for sure.
What that story really illustrates for me is how, as a young person, I think many people have this pitfall of intellectualizing. Once you start getting into thinking and logic and reasoning and all of these skills start to click in young people, I think we start getting a little big for our britches and assuming that because we intellectually understand something that we can do it. And what I've learned through experience my whole life is you can't actually know something until you do it.
Right, until the experience.
It's that learning it for yourself by doing, that kinesthetic learning, if we're talking about, learning styles and child development, that play works because it is connecting what you're thinking with what you're doing. And maybe also how you're feeling in there somewhere. So with parenting, I can imagine no greater learning curve because there just is no preparing you for any step of that experience. It is all going to be new in some regard. Even if you have one child and your second child comes along, you're going to be like, I thought I already had a 1-year-old, but you haven't had this one.
And even, we see even people who their life's work is being a therapist or a social worker or a psychologist. It's different with your when you have your own child and you are with them 24/7 and you are going to be their parent for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It's a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that showed up, I think, for me in a microcosm of that because I am not yet a parent myself, but I have played a significant role in the day-to-day life of young children. And I was once a nanny for a family with one child who was going through the toilet learning phase while I was full-time with them. Mm-hmm. And that actually meant that I was spending more time working with this little girl as she's learning how to use the toilet than her parents were. Mm-hmm. And they recognized that challenge and gave me whatever resources and tools that they had found for themselves. But I could not have prepared myself for the experience of toilet learning with cloth diapers until I was in it. And let me tell you, it is smelly.
Well, wait a minute. You found it, my children didn't have smelly diapers at all. It was lovely. And that's a really big thing, when it is your own child. So what did you do? How did you deal with that as, you didn't birth her,
Right.
You didn't have all of the emotional attachment. I'm sure you had a strong emotional attachment, but this is a gross, smelly thing.
Yes. And I, of course, was hard pressed to contain those emotions. But at the time, I remember that it felt important to approach the situation with the desire not to cause any harm, not to express my disgust in a way that would shame her or even just to make the situation more unpleasant than it already was for both of us. Mm-hmm. So I believe that that patience and that willingness to be the adult in the situation served her in the end, because that's our role as adults. We grow up and we've had experiences before we had real agency to change things, where our grown-ups maybe didn't meet our experience with compassion or with confidence that everything would be okay. But here I had a chance to be the adult in that scenario, saying, this is normal, everybody poops,
Right, yeah.
and to understand that it's a small price I pay to swallow my vomit.
And you know what? I'm going to guess that your mom approached it in a really natural, not disgusting kind of a way, because your poop certainly didn't smell. and so you had that in there, in your body, and it conflicted with your being grossed out, but you knew inside, in your heart, as the child of somebody who pooped and moved through all of that, that you didn't want to shame. You didn't want it to be something that was going to have a negative connotation, that it's just part of things. And so you combined what you knew from your own experience and brought that into this experience, and you're caring and love for this little girl and the family that you're working with to do that in the way that that was going to really be beneficial for her and move through that process. My big concern was I didn't want my family's really harmful language and behavior towards me and angry, all of that. I didn't want that to pop out. And I needed to fight against that. Mm-hmm. And so what I did, instead of, lots of times I would just be paralyzed. And I think that that's how a lot of families are. Right. You just get paralyzed. So I'm standing there with him and I'm paralyzed. I have no idea what to do. And but it motivated me to learn and find out, okay, so what's my kid like developmentally right now? What is the language that I need to use? So I didn't handle that all that well because I pretty much froze, but I really learned from it. And that's what we hope that you'll be doing, each of you. And it is really important to have children that families that you hang out with that have older children, so that you can see what's happening. You can get an idea of what next developmental stages your child's going to be going through. So
one thing that just came up that we talk about a lot in our Sunflower Bridge program is the 80-20 rule, and how, as we're talking about all of this, be the parent you want to be, and decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do. We are always, it's implicit that you will make mistakes and that you will not always be that.
Right.
And the goal
that's how you learn
to get anywhere. It's not like you're going to achieve perfect parenting at some point. It's always going to be this imperfect learning process. But what you did when you felt really stuck in that moment with your 2-year-old was to reflect on that time and to say, well, why did I freeze up and how could I do it differently next time? And so that you're preparing yourself emotionally and mentally for being in that moment again, because that's when we get triggered. Is when the conflict arises. So giving ourselves the preparation of thinking it through, talking about it, even in the aftermath of a conflict with your child, talking about it when everything's calm again, so that you're making so much room for grace and for imperfection.
And to listen to yourself too, because somewhere in there, just like with you, there is, you kind of do know what to do, or you do know what not to do. And to give yourself grace that you're figuring it out, and you will. And even talking with your child like that. I remember my older child had just like lost a tooth, his first tooth.
Yeah.
In the car when, and the little one just lost his crackers, and I needed to go out. And I think I said, I don't know. It's a bummer that let's take your shoes off. Let's take your socks off. Even though we're outside and we're heading to the snow, let's go sit in the car because, hey, his first tooth. Let's go see what's going on. So I kind of changed the dance. I acknowledged in a kind of a pitiful way, okay, yeah, it's not fun to be you right now because your sock isn't quite right.
Yeah.
And then we went in and continued on, and I remember the rest of the day being pretty decent, actually really fun. Yeah, I did as a parent, he did, and in his sweet little snowsuit, he did some snow angels, and they just had a really great time. So, yeah, and it's a process.
Yes.
Every step of the way. Now, in this day and age, I could have Googled, what do you do when your child, very specifically, when your child is standing in the middle of the road in a snowsuit and his sock is bothering him.
Right.
And I could probably get 52, yes, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way, which could be good in some ways. But, or, somebody could tell you, my sister-in-law would say, why did you do that? You should have done this,
Right.
kind of a thing. But to what is that quote that you say about comparisons?
I always think, because I have a tendency to compare how I'm doing with how other people are doing, that comparison is the thief of joy.
Ooh, the thief of joy.
Thief of joy. Mm-hmm. As long as I am focused on what somebody else has that I don't have, I'm not going to be experiencing a lot of joy.
Yeah, and that's what we want with our children. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah. So to remember that you are becoming the parent you want to be. You're following your heart, and you get to decide. You ultimately get to decide. And it's going to be good for you and your family.
Thank you so much for listening today. To share your thoughts, feelings, or stories about being with children with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at lindsey@sunflowercreativearts.org, or you can find us on Instagram, where we also share lots of very useful parenting tips at Sunflower Creative Arts. The Sunflower Bridge podcast is kindly sponsored by Schweitzer Musical Productions, where we record every episode.
This beautiful studio. We're so lucky. Thank you.